Here we are in the Garden of Forking Paths, which is a story by George Luis Borges, written in 1941. And it is a forking amazing story. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree that it is amazing. Although the title confused me a little bit because the word forking I always considered as a substitute for an F word.
Well, that's the modern use of it, but I'm saying one of the famous poems by Robert Frost uses the word divergent. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood to where it bent in the overgrowth. So, this poem by Robert Frost, the American poet, he talks about being in the woods and he's on a path, and the path forks or diverges into two ways. He has to choose, and he stands at the fork and says, "Be one traveler long I stood." So that's one of my favorite poems. He's on the journey of life, and in the journey in life, we have to make choices to go out or not to go out, to get together with this friend or not to get together, to invest here or to invest there. So it's pretty forking amazing.
Well, we read it yesterday. If I'm asked today to give a short summary of the book, I don't think I would have coped with the exercise. Would you?
You wouldn't cope?
I think I wouldn't cope with the exercise. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to repeat the plot. Summarize, exactly. Somehow it was so fragmented to my point of view. Maybe it's just me. How about you?
No, it's very convoluted. So it folds in again on itself. If I just close my eyes and try to recount the story, I would say there is the persona of the narrator, who is a Chinese man telling about a trap he set to try to catch somebody off guard, and meanwhile he was being pursued by someone who's trying to catch him, and he leads the pursuer into the trap, and he ultimately saves the day and exonerates himself. And well, that's the end of the story. But I mean, actually, it's a metaphor for time, because the labyrinth that supposedly his ancestor has left him, which is just a story, the labyrinth is not a physical labyrinth. It is a metaphorical labyrinth.
It's interesting how it was written 100 years ago, and he already predicted that string theory, multiple universe theory, which I've known about just a few years ago.
Yes, yeah, the story was written in 1941, and any number of quantum physics guys, they love Borges. Also, metaphysical or some of these meta fiction writers, like people that write layers and layers and layers of fiction. They love Borges. So Borges was really quite ahead of his time, 1941. And, he is an Argentine writer and was invited, to travel to different places in the world and to give lectures. But he was way ahead of his time. And, there's all these cool words in it. Like he talks about there's somebody named a Prussian spy who has as an alias Victor Runeberg, R-U-N-E. A rune is symbolic sign. So there's all these references to writing and reading and translating and figuring things out and spies and alias. And I don't know, it's just really an intriguing story. Even like reading the flight of birds in the sky, there's a line where, it says, a bird streaked across the gray sky, and blindly I translated it into an airplane, and that airplane into many against the French sky, annihilating the artillery station with vertical bombs. Like, just to follow what is going on in that one sentence will blow your mind. Did you feel like your head was being torn off as you were reading this?
Absolutely. I didn't understand the story at all. It reminds me of this movie, Inception. Maybe you didn't see it, but I've watched it 100 times. I still don't understand what it's all about. I mean, I'm getting to it, but same about this book. It's full of, what's the word you used? Ambiguity? Right, contradictions anyway. Plenty of food for thought.
Yes. And there's like so many references to books. Like he looks in a telephone book and this guy that he goes to meet, shows him an old book, and the book was crimson, and then the book was black, and like everything keeps changing. But if you go back, some of our subscribers go back to our episode on Magritte, who was a Belgian surrealist painter, and I think we have the image of a kind of a fish mermaid, except it's got the lower legs of a woman and the head of a fish. Reality is in how it's perceived, and the perception is in consciousness, not just through the eyes. Like, a cat can look at cat food, and, a dog can look at cat food, but the human being is aware that he's aware. So yeah, I also felt like my head was torn off, and it was very challenging to read, because I've read some Borges before, but I had not specifically read the story. And I just felt like I was just struggling to get to the end of the sentence and just trying to figure out where the sentence would end. Like, how many more words did I have to read?
I remember I asked you, why are the first 2 pages are missing? And you said, no, they're not actually missing. That's the idea. That the writer says that the first 2 pages are missing to stick in the plot, right?
Yeah, because Borges knows literary techniques. He's read classical mythology. He probably reads, Greek. He reads Spanish. He knows all the Greek plays. He knows Roman civilization. This is a very, very learned man. So in the Greek plays, like Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, the Greek ancient Greek writers, one of their techniques was to start the play in the middle of the action. So it's called in medias res. So in the trilogy of Oedipus the King by Sophocles, it starts in the middle of the action. So, just the beginning of the story has us like scrambling not to fall down. Like when we say we're trying to get our ground, we're trying to get our footing. When I printed this out, I printed out a hard copy of it, and when I was reading it in hard copy, I thought, oh, okay, this is in medias res. But your question was exactly what Borges was looking for, like someone to say, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Where are the pages? He achieved what he wanted.
I'm thinking of what I would just be writing with you, drop and roll, that when we encounter some kind of a dead end, you're saying, what are we going? I mean, where does it lead to us to? And we can just write the sentence that 3 pages are missing and start whatever it is we start.
Well,
use the same technique.
Yes. And I was also thinking, for some of our new subscribers, maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago or back, is a story that we started writing a couple months ago called Drop and Roll. And it starts off with a guy sitting in a cell. And we're not sure if the cell is in a prison or is it a mental hospital or if it's a train station or where he is. And there's a woman who comes up to the cell door and looks in. She's got a notepad and she's kind of jotting down some things. Then it appears like maybe something has gone wrong. Maybe he's been accused, but is he innocent? Is he guilty? And we've been kind of writing it back and forth over the past month or two. And actually, I don't know where the story is going. I'm discovering it as we're doing the writing. And you told me the other day, like, maybe we're doing something important or good. I don't know.
Exactly. So when someone's read it besides us and say, what are you writing about? If there is such a question, we can just replace this part, which confuses our subscribers, with the line that the next 2 pages are missing. Leave it to them, right?
Well, some of the people from, there's a community called MeWe, which is similar to like a Facebook community. It's an online community. And there's some really, really great people in it. This one fellow who's a college professor himself, very well read. One of his things that he asked was, well, perhaps you should give the characters names, because you don't want the reader to get confused. Who does he refer to and who does she refer to? And then somebody else who has traveled widely, I think it was Ralphie Boy, or I don't know, maybe, it was Ralphie Boy. Someone said, well, just keep writing. It sounds interesting. And then Tony Carnes, who's like an art critic and like very, very interesting person, well-read and like thoughtful and baffled about life. He goes, sounds great. I want to see what happens. Just keep writing. And then a couple days later, the first guy goes by the name of Familiar Person. His avatar is a cat. He goes, well, maybe you are onto something. Well, let's just see what happens. So, we've had some good feedback. And then a couple other people, I've tried to let people listen to it. They go, what's going on? I don't understand it. So this is not a story for everyone, Drop and Roll. But I don't know. I'm kind of having fun writing it. Are you having fun?
I alternate between fun and anxiety, shall we say. but speaking of cat, you mentioned the cat. Do you remember a couple of days ago we kind of slightly discussed the Schrödinger's cat experiment? I think that's how it sounds, Schrödinger. So when there is a cat in a box and you don't know whether it's alive or dead. So this story, with all these multiple possibilities, layers, yes, yeah, which inevitably lead to the only one outcome, reminded me of that Schrödinger's cat experience, because you have to make a decision and you have to choose one alternative at the expense of all the others, because only one thing can happen. And that's what I call a cluster F word and mind F word. And I like it.
Clusterfuck and mindfuck.
Cluster fork. Speaking of fork in path. Yeah.
Forking garden. Well, I sort of think that this idea of the multiple or parallel universes, like, for example, right now we are speaking in real time, but you're located in one part of the world. I'm located in another part of the world. Someone else that I have a cool friendship with is probably asleep right now. Somebody else that I know someplace is an insomniac. He's probably wandering around, going through his refrigerator looking for old pizza. So there are these other realities going on at the same time that I am somehow a part of. Does that make sense?
Not as much as you'd like to have made sense, because it's like, I remember, we are, first of all, you're a stranger, I'm a stranger. You, in this book, like similar to what happens in this book, you knocks at my door and I either decide to kill you or I invite you in, because number of things can happen. Or you can kill me, or we can kill each other. I don't know. So many alternatives. We both can die, or we both can survive. I don't know.
Well, yes,
It
yes.
doesn't
And then
mean anything, but I
no,
like
it
it.
means no, it means everything. Also, doorways and mirrors are portals, portal, portal to another reality. So let me just briefly say that I have experienced the feeling of possibly a spirit coming through a mirror. I have experienced, I think a long time ago, I've played with a Ouija board. I've read palms, like I can hold somebody's hand and it can feel kind of what's going on, and tarot cards. So opening yourself to the possibility of another world is something that people kind of do. And I randomly or synchronistically had my laptop open looking for a Eric Clapton song, I Shot the Sheriff. And suddenly this video came up, suggested to me by who's ever behind my laptop feeding me ideas, that I should watch this little video about Navajo wisdom. And the video was about like 3 things you should never do according to Navajo wisdom. And I thought, well, gosh, I better see what they are. And one of them was, do not stand in a doorway because spirits are coming and going there. Like, don't stand in a doorway. So when you say, let's suppose that there's a doorway and you can kill me, I can kill you, we can go out and get a beer together, we can close the door, we can do other things. The other thing is, like, if we're standing, you're on the outside of the door and I'm on the inside of the door and I'm opening it, there could also be a spirit between us. How does that make you feel?
A little bit funny, a little bit, because this technique fires my imagination. Like it fires it with lots of truth bombs, drops lots of truth bombs.
No,
accessible.
yeah. No, just keep telling, just keep talking. We're just kind of freestyling here. Just getting different ideas inspired by the Garden of Forking Paths. But what about the threshold or the mirror as a portal to another world? Did you say you were looking in the mirror and you were thinking, don't touch your face, but you thought you saw something else? What was the deal? You said a couple of days ago you were looking in the mirror.
No, I was making a joke, basically. I said that I looked at the mirror. It seemed to me that the man came out of it and he's still in my apartment. And you get a little bit scared, or maybe you didn't. But I was again kidding. Because I thought, what if somebody comes out of this mirror? Because it's a portal.
That happens to me.
And then hides in my apartment.
What? No, but the thing is, it would be helpful if you could tell me or us when you're just joking or when something happened, because you're also telling me you were on the subway going to work or coming to work, and on the subway it's kind of crowded, and sometimes people hold on to a little handle above them or the rail in front of them, and you said that you had the feeling that there was a woman standing near you, and then when you glanced, I guess the subway car jolted, and then the woman put her hand out and suddenly it shape-shifted into a man's hand. Do you remember that, or are your COVID symptoms?
No. I remember a shapeshifter in female form, exactly.
Tell us what it is. Tell our subscribers what it is, or review it for me.
Well, there was a man standing next to me. With my peripheral vision, I saw it was men, and then this man, quote unquote, hand out his hand. Is that how you say? Not hand out, but anyway.
Stretched out his hand.
Take the part of it. How do you call that thing that people hold the subway in order not to be thrown away?
He held on to a bar or a handle or something.
Exactly, and the hand was, I mean, you can tell a lot about female, that woman, by her hand.
So it was a woman's hand?
Exactly. And
what could you tell about?
I look at the man, and he turned out to be a woman. And she wasn't pregnant. No. And then no, she wasn't.
Because I mean, you would have had a memory of that, right? No, so it was a. We were standing on the subway. So you in the real world were riding on a real subway. So this is not a story we're writing, and you.
No. But what if it's one of the possibilities, which could have ended up in an outcome had I not decided to bail out of that.
Invitation. That's an invitation to another world. So if it was like, angels are spirits that come from the divine into the world, the physical world. And sometimes I think that different things have happened to me in my life, and then I'll just like turn around and all of a sudden they're gone. Like, once I needed some money and I was, trapped in a difficult marriage. I've been trapped. Well, I was trapped in the second one, but the first one I bailed out. But anyhow, so I needed some money, but I was boxing some things to mail out because we had this business mailing out different things. And all of a sudden, like I was living in a house, and the house has a doorbell right next to the door of the house. Then there's a front porch that has bars on it. So, and then there's, plants on this patio. So to get out of the house, you open the door, you step onto this porch, then you use a key to open the bars to go get in your car or to go outside. So I was in the house, and all of a sudden, I heard the doorbell ring, and I didn't think about it. And I just walked. There was two little windows on the side. You could pull the curtains back to see who it was, and I just saw 3 guys standing out there. And I thought, oh, I wonder what these guys want. And then I opened the door. Remember, the metal bars are separating me from these 3 guys. And they go, well, we came here, we want to buy some leather jackets or some leather sweaters or something. We were selling, leather jackets, purses, tops, all this merchandise from like Spain and Turkey. So the first thing that's odd is that I heard the doorbell ring, but I step out there, I go, okay, well, do you have cash? They go, yeah, we got cash. I go, what colors do you want? What do you want? They gave me a couple things. I closed the front door and I went into the garage, which was also locked, where we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boxes stored. So I just pulled 3 or 4 things out, stuck them in a bag, walked back to the door, and I handed these things to the guy. I said, well, let me have your cash. So they stretched out, one guy stretched out his hand and he had like, $300 bills. So anytime I have cash, I don't have to report it. I don't have to report it to my husband. I don't have to report it to my neighbor. I don't have to report it. Cash lets you be invisible. So the guy hands me $300 bills and I just hand through the gate couple bags that had some items that he wanted. He wanted a red sweater made out of leather. He wanted a black vest. Then I go, okay, have a nice day. And I just went back inside. It was summertime. It was in Houston, Texas. I came back inside and I locked the door and I went and sat down and I was drinking some lemonade. And then suddenly I thought, how could they ring the doorbell if the doorbell's next to the house? It's not on the outside. And then I stood up. Like 5 or 6 minutes later, I stood up and I looked outside and there was no one there. Then I opened the gate and looked down the street, left and right. There was no one there. So what I believe is that 3 angels came and brought me $300 worth of cash.
Well, that is a story in itself.
Yeah. But, the shapeshifter lady, people, we're invited to stuff all the time. We're invited to parties. We're invited to dinner. We're invited to go on a little trip. We're invited to come over for a beer. And not everything we're invited to is good.
And still don't understand the life's meaning. I think if life's meaning get to explain to us, we probably wouldn't understand it anyway. Like this story, the
Garden of the Forking Path.
Garden of the Forking Path. Yes, I tried to understand it, but then again, I had to probably to have a flow chart in front of me in order to follow.
Yeah.
Although it's short, but still, I consider myself an intelligent man. But maybe not that intelligent. Anyway,
a couple
to understand
languages.
The story equals to find life's meaning. To think that a man can find it is absurd. I mean, I'm talking about myself, of course. But I live without understanding it. No problem.
No, I agree. I mean, I printed out my copy, and I have a pencil, so I was circling different things as I was reading it, like the number 13 repeats, and then this guy asks questions. Am I now going to die? And then there's this part about the birds flying against the sky. I'm like, it's going up and down stairs. And then, there's music coming from this garden. It's Chinese music. And then he's standing and someone's standing with his back to the mirror, and there's a clock. Like this ancestor has left his position of power to write a book and to build a labyrinth, and everyone just says, well, this is just the product of a chaotic mind. Like, really? And we get to the very end of the story, and the last paragraph starts off, the rest is unreal and insignificant. Like, we've read through the whole dang story, and the last paragraph says the rest is unreal and insignificant. Usually in the last paragraph of a story, we figure out why are we reading the story. I mean, I also don't understand the story. I can parse out a few bits and pieces, but I don't know. I have
this feeling that you're trying to make it intellectual, whereas I'm coming instinctive. Does that make any sense? I mean, don't you think that instinctive and intellectual can exist simultaneously in parallel universes in one story?
What's the question again? No, are they mutually exclusive?
I don't know. I don't know how to formulate my question. It's just that you're trying to being intellectual. You're trying to make everything intellectual.
I'm not trying. I'm not even trying.
Yeah, absolutely. You're doing everything intellectual.
I'm saying when he talks about that there's music, well, I can hear the music. And then, this guy says, would you like to come into my garden? It's like, oh, yeah. And then this guy, Stephen Albert, he likes books and he plays chess and he's a poet and he's a calligrapher. Like, I want to go visit that guy as a woman. But he's hanging out in the pavilion of limpid solitude. Like, limp stuff on guys is not really attractive. Like, why is he in a limpid solitude? I don't know. I mean, they also talk about an ivory labyrinth, which is a reference to the ivory tower. The ivory tower is where the intellectuals live. Okay, so you're a man, and you're what? You're emotional, you're physical. What are you?
Remind me. What I am. I don't know what I am anymore.
Well, there you go.
He was Argentinian, this guy. The man, I mean, he was Argentinian. You said the other day they speak Portuguese, right? So what we read was a translation, because I noticed that few words you read was different from what I have in front of me.
Well, yeah, you printed as our cover shot the Penguin edition. I had made another cover shot that was a different edition. So Borges, I think he wrote this originally in Portuguese, and when it was published, it's been published in 20 languages. So whether it's going into French or Italian or German, the translator is going to choose certain words. Like, in that story, the hills like white elephants, the actual text that we read talks about this bartender bringing some felt fabric and putting it under the beer. Well, it's not felt fabric, it's a coaster. But, people choose words to, make the translation. I don't know, there are parts of the story that I really, really like. Like he says, Borges says that there's a commandment that each version of this story repeats again and again. Thus fought the heroes, tranquil their admirable hearts, violent their swords, resigned to kill and to die. So to me, that's kind of the essence of what a man is. That's what men are made for.
I'm kind of speechless.
No, I mean, men enjoy battle. I mean, like the Trojan War was fought over a woman. Was this the face that launched 1,000 ships? Helen of Troy. The Odyssey and the Iliad is all about men going to battle for what they believe in. And obviously Borges believed in writing.
You sent me the screenshot, I think, where the Garden of Forking Path was one of the many, or some sort of a digest or anthology of short stories. Is that right? So can we read another one day? It's okay, like Man Without Woman of Hemingway.
Yeah.
What we read is just one of many.
Well, there's another one very, very famous that's called I think it's called Tower of Babel or something like that. But the version that I had, Garden of the Forking Path, has a Chinese pavilion with a garden beyond it, and it has this as its kind of epigram. I leave to the various futures my garden of forking paths. George Louis Borges. So the version I was reading from has that quote that Borges selected. I leave to the various futures my garden of forking paths. So we are reading this story in his future. He wrote it in what? 1940 something? And we're reading it in 2023. So he has actually left this to us. How does that make you feel? Tired, right? I feel exhausted.
I need some sugar. I'm getting cranky, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go find some ice cream or
beer.
Something. Yeah, beer.
Beer has lots of sugar in it. Also, it's not sweet.
Okay.
This brings us back to where does it bring us back to?
The beginning of time.
Right.
It brings us back to the beginning because, the Garden of Eden is a garden and the Minotaur is at the center of the garden. Aeschylus and, not Aeschylus, what's his name? Icarus and Daedalus, the father, son, guys had to build this labyrinth to put the Minotaur in because, Zeus was messing around. Or the famous Birth of Venus by Botticelli shows woman rising from the seashell. So, yeah, gardens and all that is just part of being a human being. I'm thinking today to go into a garden someplace and eat some ice cream, maybe sit in my car and eat ice cream while looking at a garden. Are there any gardens?
Remember, there are infinite possibilities and only one outcome.
Well, we don't know that yet. because yesterday I thought I was going to do something, and then it was like a hailstorm. I didn't even know it was going to hail.
Exactly. My point exactly.
Say it again.
My point exactly.
What's the point?
That there is this only one outcome that your heart reacts to, that your heart races to and believes in. How do you like that?
That sounds great. That sounds great. Yeah, I'm hyperventilating right now.
No, it's fun.